And good morning. Here we are, July 27 today.
Yes.
July
Yep.
27, yeah. 2022, here we are. And thanks for coming, guys. We're going to continue looking at John, the Gospel of John. And today we're going to look at, as it says on the screen, verses 22 through 25 of John chapter 10. So first of all, let's review from last time. We see Jesus being responded to, and last time we looked at two different responses. What's common with the two groups, group one or group A and group B, or group one and group two, I guess is what I called them last time, is that the end result, or once each group filters the presence of Jesus through their own created grid and framework, which is depicted by the box, which is common to all human beings, they come up with two distinct locations for Jesus. One to the left box, the box one folks, they push Jesus outside. And the reason they put Jesus outside is that I believe part of human nature is that unless it's a major step to include something I do not understand. The common human nature is to push what I don't understand outside of my world at arm's length and reject it because it's primarily scary. The box two people are different, and they end with a question. Box one people end in judgment, box two people end with a question. And that question is, how could he be of the devil? I think that's the text, if he is opening the eyes of the blind, which is part of what we've been looking at in the context. So this situation right before us, it created dissension. And it's the same type of thing that we see in a very dramatic sense in our world today. Different beliefs create dissension, and we're really experiencing it in a number of different ways. In our story, the inclusive actions demonstrated by the box two folks, they are including Jesus, and it creates an aggressive tension with those in box one. This then created dissension, and there's the word, dissension. And dissension is a big descriptor of our context today, especially in our culture and reflective of within the church itself. We then discussed our thoughts about inclusion and dissension and tension. We looked at that last time. Today, we go on to verses 22 through 25, and it says that at that time, it's a shift in time that John puts into further his context and what he's trying to communicate through his gospel account. At that time, the feast of the dedication took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple area in the portico of Solomon. The Jews then surrounded him and began saying to him, quote, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly." Then in verse 25, Jesus answered them, "I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me." So that's the text today. That's the story. So let's take a look at it. First of all, the setting. It's at the time of what's called the festival. Let me start over. The Feast of Dedication. And it took place in Jerusalem. So there's a blow up rendition of what the second temple looked like at the time of Jesus. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple area in the portico of Solomon. So some of the stuff regarding the temple here, down here, the gates of Huldah, this would be the south facing area. And this is where the people would enter, right down through here, and they would come up onto the main plaza floor, which was right in here. There were these either stairways or ramps, I don't know which, that brought pilgrims into the temple area. Here's the temple proper. Holy of Holies is right here. The eastern wall, which is the Wailing Wall today, which is right here. And the portico or the Solomon's porch is this surrounding area here. And I always include this area here too, and this area here. It's this covered area of the Temple Mount, and that's where Jesus is walking in the winter at the time of the Feast of Dedication. So let's look at this. The Feast of Dedication is the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. And it's an 8-day festival, and it takes place in the Jewish month of Chislev, which is corresponds to November, December. And it's about 3 months after the Festival of Tabernacles, which we have been looking at. So 3 months have passed, and it's during this 8-day festival. We'll talk a little bit more. I can't remember what's on each side, but I'll hold my comments and let the screen prompt me. Hanukkah is celebrated in remembrance of an incident which took place in, I'm saying 167 BCE. That's close. You can read about it in First Maccabees. It's in conjunction with the Maccabean revolt. What happened was, during this time, Israel and Jerusalem was under Greek control by Seleucid kings. And one king, Antiochus Epiphanes, was ruler, and he desecrated the temple, the Jewish temple, strong-armed the Jewish people, desecrating it by offering unclean animals and a number of different things to bring outrage to the people. Well, a good portion of that created the Maccabean revolt, which the book of Maccabees talks about it. And Judah, Maccabeus, he led a group of revolters, and they took back the temple during this time. This is what Hanukkah is about. And it means to dedicate, because they rededicated the temple. Now, it's important to note Hanukkah wasn't part of the Torah, but it was inserted at a later time, at the beginning of the end of the 1st century BCE, as a remembrance by the Jewish people of this rededication of the temple. And what's unique about Hanukkah, according to tradition, they rededicated the temple. They came in, they kicked out all of the Greek people, regained power of the temple area. I'm not sure about the rest of the country. I'm not that informed on the history, but they regained temple control, and they set up a menorah, which is an 8 candlesticks. You've seen pictures of a Jewish menorah, and they only had enough oil for 1 day, but the lamp, all 8 flames, burned for 8 days. And the Jewish people adopted that as a miracle and a sign or a confirmation of God's care for the people of Israel. And at this time, they really needed some good news. Many of the people, the believing people, would be asking, God, where are you? If we are God's chosen people, why are we for decades, under a Gentile control, second-class citizens, and so forth? So it was a major undertaking and victory in the Jewish people, a national victory, which also gave way to a spiritual victory. There was close correlation. So this time is set aside as a national remembrance celebrating God's miraculous deliverance. And the miraculous piece primarily is derived from the lack of oil and the miraculous burning of the oil for 8 days, thus the 8-day festival. And when you think of Hanukkah, they usually show a menorah and candles, or not, of lights, a burning lampstand. So that's the background. And because it's in the winter, this is when it took place. It's cold there. The natural location for the conversation that we're looking at in John 10 is in the Solomon's portico or porch, which we already pointed out. And the reason it's natural to have it there is because it's protected. It's got a roof over it and 3 sides of protection. And so therefore, it just would lend itself to a good place for a winter outdoor conversation. And that's why it's there. So the request, the Jews surrounded him. They came in while he's walking in the portico. Why he's there? Maybe it was for morning meditation. I don't know, but they surrounded him. And I'm picturing kind of a posse kind of gathering around him. And they asked him this question: how long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly. At this point, the crowd had enough information to understand what Jesus was attempting to communicate. This surrounding and the whole context of this question is, from my perspective, accusatory. It's not a seeking question regarding anticipation towards a belief. It is it's not that at all. It is an accusation towards Jesus. And again, that's my interpretation. They were saying, in essence, how long will you continue to annoy us? Is really how I interpret it. And I'm not alone in looking at that. This crowd has a pressing need to figure out Jesus. This is where we're going with this. They need to put Jesus within their box, within their framework. He is in the world. They don't understand him, and they've got to do what's necessary in order to bring Jesus into their understanding. That's their need, not his need. However, and in direct accord with what we've looked at last time, the crowd is attempting to understand Jesus in reference to their own prescribed way of thinking. This is really important. They've come up with the box, and it's their high need to put Jesus within that box so they can understand him. Unless they can figure it out, this whole thing of figuring it out, they're using their own tools to figure it out, their only option is to reject him. That unless they can understand him by bringing him in the box, like we looked at last time, their only option from their untransformed way of dealing with things is rejection. We keep pushing him out. So here it's illustrated. Same thing illustrated. We have a crowd here. and we have Jesus. Now, if I was to be more accurate, it would show the crowd around Jesus. So this is just a segment of the crowd. And this is my really simple Jesus right here. And what they do to animate it is they drop an anvil on in the form of a question. They derive the question, and that derived question is based on a high need to put Jesus within their box of understanding. And so they do what all humans do. An untransformed human action is to apply force, and that force has many faces and in many ways, but the crowd attempts to strong arm Jesus by applying an anvil of force. They apply their force, and it looks like, in this case, a question, which they impose onto him. They want Jesus. They want Jesus to be the Jesus that they need Jesus to be. And I think what is so true of this crowd, as you think about it, is true of, it's a human nature. Yes, Tatsi. You have to turn your mic on, Tatsi. We can't hear you. You're muted. There you go. Go
I
ahead.
was just adjusting my earphones because they were irritating my hearing aid. So,
Oh, so you don't have a question?
no, I don't have
Oh,
a
okay.
question.
You were just wailing, you were flailing your arms because your hearing aids are bothering. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I asked my former partner yesterday after we had a meeting with Poudre Fire Authority. I said, Doug, do you perceive me as someone who misses conversations sometimes because of my hearing aids? Because I notice he's talking louder to me. And he goes, yeah. So I'm there. I'm one of those. I guess we all end up there. I don't know. So according to Jesus, now we're going to move to 25. Jesus answers them with, this question, how long are you going to hold us in suspense? He says, quote, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me. What is so enlightening and endearing about the person of Christ, he's not motivated to try to be what the crowd needs to be in order for them to like him. He's speaking from an entire different source, and we can get a glimpse of that origin source from how he responds. According to Jesus, and supported thus far by John's gospel account, because I'm looking at what we've read thus far, the more information request as what the question appears to be, they need more information, tell us plainly, is not the issue at all. Many up to this point within John's gospel have believed up to the point. Therefore, their lack of embrace has nothing to do with needed information. Tell us plainly. It's smoke and mirrors. And I've experienced this. I have done this on numerous occasions. I don't have a specific example, but what is on the table as the exchange is really not what really is, not what is the real motivation and the real question. I'm sure you would have the same thing from your experience. In response, Jesus refers to his works. So now he's talking about his works. When he refers to his works, he's referring to all of his actions, everything he does. In addition, although it's not stated here, but I would add that his words and his works are always in 100% alignment. This is unique to Jesus. He's not two-faced. His words always line up with his works, and his works always align with his words. So it looks like this. Words lead to works, and works lead to words. It's like his response is like a core, he's stating a core issue, not a core issue, his core source of motivation, which is his relationship with his Father. Therefore, he concludes that his own works testify of his authenticity. All of his works are sourced from his relationship with his Father, representing what truly is. You know, when you guys, when I came on this morning, I heard the tail end of a conversation about a counselor. I don't know if that counselor is still doing it or not, but he was popular at one time. And Vince made the comment of this counselor that this counselor would say something like, if you have a drinking problem, well, that's easy, just stop drinking. Well, I would say, now, Steve, you could lean into this way better than I could, but that has been, I think counseling, I think a mentor, I think a therapist, I think that role is a very needed role today. I would say that the bulk of what I've heard about how to stop doing a sin that I'm in is that at the moment of temptation, just stop. It's just about managing the sin and applying different techniques in order to deal with the pinnacle of the sin, which then creates shame and everything else. I would say that a much better approach, and as modeled as I understand Jesus, is that to the degree that you and I or anybody can understand how God thinks of me, that is true. I've created frameworks of thinking that are untrue. Or I could say it less than true, meaning some of it's true, some of it's not true. But I know enough about me at this age that I tend to self-condemn. Now, maybe some people do it that way. Some people condemn others, and they're masking the pain within. But I think that whole approach is really secondary. Sure, techniques and so forth, I'm not arguing, but to transformation, to me, really the road is about coming to understand how God thinks of me. And that is a lifelong journey, guys. And that is the context of how Jesus is talking to the people right here and in many other places. It's all about him wanting to set people free from the self-binding handcuffs that they have created and that we have created as a people and as individuals. He concludes that his works testify of his authenticity. Yes, he has the authority to speak as he speaks, And everything is sourced out of that relationship that John talks about many times. He has said everything is about relationship. I can't argue with that. It is about relationship with the Father representing, and that relationship represents what is true. Jesus always demonstrates what is true, regardless of crowd opinion. So now it's illustrated. 25 is illustrated. Jesus said, I told you. He's told them on numerous occasions and in numerous ways they don't need more information. They need to let go. And he says, you don't believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, these testify of me. So what Jesus is saying, you've got now, I turned my Jesus image into a me and I labeled it me. So that's you and me. So you and I'm illustrating and personalizing this text. So as I look out for me, I see his words and his works. And that represents the all presence of Jesus, his words and his works, what he says and what he does. I see these things. And when I see these things are designed to inform my life, my real life, not just my theological understanding and getting things correct, but my life, my daily life, my existence. What he says and what he does is designed to model how I can be. His words and works are always in agreement, and these demonstrate what is real. Jesus is not attempting. We need something real because I tend to build what is not real. Jesus represents square one basis. Jesus is not attempting to win the favor of the people through proving that he is worthy of their trust. Rather, he is speaking and showing what is real in order to invite them to an abundant life. That is key word out of John 10. I've come to give you life and to give it more abundantly. I think that is Jesus's general call and intent, life abundant right now. So this is a critical point. This little juncture right here. And I've got a comment. Thus, it's a critical point, and it thus informing, the whole idea of informing is not about me acknowledging Jesus as the correct Savior. That's certainly part of it, but it's not the end result. It's not a crossing of a T and dotting of an I, but rather through this acknowledgement, it's intended to bring me closer in alignment with what truly is, which then can free me to experience what he calls abundant life. So my way of thinking, right or wrong, is that the human condition that we would call as the fallen nature, the human condition that we're in, the problem that is all around us, is derived by self-created ways of thinking that we can't get free from. And Jesus is inviting us to something different, but it involves a letting go, which always feels like dying. It's really painful to let go of my own pre-constructed ideas. And I think that invitation is the good news. However, there is, on the other side, there's some sort of blockage as illustrates below. So let's say there's a blockage in my ability to see. I've got fogged lenses on. I've got no lenses on. I always have lenses. I cannot see his words and his works. I cannot, and that's illustrated on the screen. And so, because I cannot see, I cannot be informed. It just follows in a logical sequence. If I don't know, I don't know. I only know what I know. It's me. Thus, I am limited by my own perceptions. So, Christian people, us, me, it is very possible for me to not see who he is in some manner. But what I end up seeing through my falling condition is I tend to see myself over and over and over again. This would be a fun exercise. If you go to Google and write the word of Jesus in, and then click it to images, look at all of the images of Jesus, all the different images of Jesus, and you and I could just spend an hour looking at various Jesus faces. And all of these were created by human beings. And it's only natural to create Jesus in our own image. And so we're really not seeing the face of Jesus. Now, I think faces of Jesus are fine, but it's an illustration of what we do. And we tend as human beings to create Jesus in our own image is because we see ourselves over and over again, applying how we understand at a given time, and it fogs what truly is. So here's our table time, and with our illustration, we've looked at two ways to encounter works from the text. Two ways. One is a receptivity, those who believe. We didn't see these people in this story, but they are present within the bigger story. There is a receptivity, actually we looked at last week. And there is a blockage. So we've got these two ideas out on the table of receptivity and blockage. And where I come up with blockage is through today's text, because they're not speaking for more information, seeking. They are blocked by their current information and using a question in an accusatory sense in order to make Jesus who they need him to be. And I'm looking at that, they're not seeing clearly. So question one, what do you guys think are the conditions for receptivity? What makes a receptive heart? And then secondly, what causes blockage? I'm blockage. That's a big word for us today, blockage. What causes blockage and what conditions for receptivity? What do you guys think about this?
I'm reading this book that was recommended last week, the Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, and he's a cultural sociologist, I guess, or a psychologist, and he studies different cultures and different peoples as that why they think the way they think.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was very interesting to me, so far.
Yeah, what are you learning? You could talk
Well,
about.
I realized how cloistered I am just from by choice as a Christian. It's my way or the highway. This is how people think. This is how human beings think because this is how Vince thinks. And everybody thinks differently. It's just wrong, simple as that. And then he, as a more learned person, an academic, he goes to cultures in different countries and says, things like, why do you treat this woman the way you treat her? Because, well, she eats fish 3 times a week. I mean, geez, what else can I say?
Yeah.
And he goes, what are you talking about?
Like it's pretty obvious she eats fish 3 times a week. Don't you?
I mean, come on. And it turns out, at least he states, that in that culture, fish has a libido affecting, it affects you. It's an aphrodisiac type of a thing. And for any single woman to purposefully eat something that would cause them to lust or something, just as evidence that she's a loose woman, and she should be put outside the town and things.
Interesting.
And it's I'm like, wow, I guess, but then I think about, my life, and this instance in the record that you're describing is people have a predetermined, this is what the Messiah is going to look like. And you better be doing what I've decided that he looks like. And if you're not doing it, you're not him. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And what if you're wrong? Just what if you're wrong? So I think the receptivity part of it is to be coachable, to be meek, to be open to things that you don't know, and to say that this isn't the way I was brought up. This isn't the culture that I came from, but I'll listen to you. I'll hear your case. I'll consider what you're saying and not just cut it off right away because it's different from me. Because there are just so many different ways of looking at the same thing in this world that I was never exposed to. I was only exposed to me. And the world's bigger than me, and so I think these guys, they had their historical idea of what the Messiah was going to do, what he was going to sound like, how you would know him. And then now Jesus comes in and he does stuff that's to Jesus, which is the standard. I've told you who I was. I'm doing the works of my Father. I mean, how many different ways can I tell you?
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not the right way. Just sort of silly, but.
And it's not the right way because they have said it's not the right way.
They were expecting a certain way, and that wasn't it. Yeah. Rather than just saying, I guess what I was expecting was wrong.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So that leads to blockage, that second question. What is it, Vince, or anybody within our human nature that causes us to be so closed to other ways of viewing, like in Vince's example? What is it within us? What is our motivation or lack of motivation?
Well, the Bible would call it sin, but we'll leave that as another conversation for another day. But so in Israel, it's been quiet, no prophets for 400 years. And then John the Baptist shows up and they kind of don't know what to do with him. He's kind of the crazy guy out there, but people are flocking to John the Baptist. And then Jesus is creating quite a stir. And so in one sense, these good Jews are holding tight to their Judaism. And this guy that's stirring it up is breaking the paradigm. He's breaking some of the rules. He's doing things on the Sabbath. He doesn't wash his hands right? The disciples. And so there's a couple things that he's really upsetting their paradigm, their belief system. So what creates blockage, and I kind of go back to us, our unwillingness to let go die, to be receptive to what this person of Jesus is saying, to be receptive to something bigger, different. And the prophets, the Messiah, won't disagree with the paradigm, our belief system, this thing we hold tight to. So I think that's the problem. And I'm not sure we're much different than those Jews.
I agree. Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I get part of Jesus, but I'm not sure I get how do we get ears to hear, right?
Yeah.
And,
Let me respond to what you just said. While you were talking, John and Vince, I was listening and my wheels were turning. I think for me, I've had difficulty, and even though I'm not aware of this, in separating what is true. Jesus keeps talking about the truth. And I have a difficulty separating what is true and what I think is true, or what I have been taught is true, or what others I have adopted have said is true. And that's where I get confused. And to let go of that is really difficult. To let go of an idea and allow someone to continue within my mind. I'm on tilt and I've got red and yellow lights flashing in my head. That really requires a dying. There's something inside of me that wants to respond, to correct, to correct. And why do I feel that way? Am I defending Jesus? I don't think Jesus needs any defense. But that's what I'm getting down to what it feels like. So it's a confusion in my head. What do you think, John?
So we have a strong inner thing that to a desire to be right.
I think so. Yeah.
Mike, you don't have the truth. I got the truth. Vince, you're out to lunch, man. So we have this little thing inside that we hold on to about being right? And that kind of fuels us. I think one of the things Jesus drops a bomb on is this idea of being right? So it can have to do with control, it has to do with dying, it has to do with all, letting go. But the question then drives, okay, Jesus, I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God. I got it. I believe, right? And yeah, you upset my apple cart a little bit with some of the things you say and do, but there's way too much evidence that kind of says I got to let go of some of this. And so I'll follow you. But part of me holds tight to, I got to have the right theology. This truth thing is there something bigger than truth? Is there something bigger than being right? Is there
I
something?
I was watching yesterday the Pope was doing his like Canadian I'm sorry tour kind of thing. He went there on behalf of the Catholic Church as the vicar of the church and just apologizing, and the commentators that were talking, the newscasters saying this has already been done. I mean, the Catholic Church formally apologized for what happened in these institutional schools a couple of years ago, and yet the Pope is doing it again. And they brought up, I thought it was a pretty insightful comment, say that the people to whom the Pope was apologizing were, indigenous people, Indians, I guess they're called. In Canada, they're called something else. I don't know, but their culture puts a lot of weight on land, terra firma, and the apology done from Rome wasn't enough. You got to come to this actual plot of ground and apologize for it to carry the meaning that you intended to mean, and for us to receive it. And I thought, what an odd thing, not being from that culture, but I thought, what a loving gesture on the behalf of the Pope.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I've already apologized. What do you want from me? I mean, I didn't do any of this. But if this is what it's going to take to relieve the burden from your hearts and to allow us to live together in peace, if it's going to take me to go there, I'll go, and do it. And I thought that was an interesting melding of cultures and different perspective on what's important. And what do you want me to do? I'll do it. Because the bigger picture is that you guys are broken by what we did. And I want it to go away. I want you to be healed. And he was willing to do it. I thought that was a great gesture, making more of it.
He is willing to go to the actual locations.
He physically went there, and the guy's 85 and he's got a broken knee and he's in a wheelchair and he's hobbling around. I mean, it wasn't a easy trip,
Right.
But he knew that, from what these guys, the commentators said, he knew that that's what it's going to take, because me sitting on my throne in Rome is not cutting it.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool with what Mike's been talking about. So what causes blockage? Right. So one of the pieces to that puzzle is lack of forgiveness, or experiencing the experiential part of forgiveness. Right. And then I was thinking, how cool is it that Jesus came to earth? I mean, we had his words and stuff and the prophets and all that. Right?
Interesting.
Why did he come? And that's another sidebar, but yeah. This idea of blockage is a lifelong, which I say pilgrimage too, right? Just an awareness of blockage or receptivity. Do we really want to hear?
Yeah.
I already said, Jesus, I believe, so let's move on.
Yeah.
Right? I believe you're the Christ. Or our unwillingness to say he was just a good moral teacher.
Yeah.
Is, yeah. Totsi, come on, what's going on in those headphones?
Well, I don't want to get too technical about this, but this whole subject actually applies to what I'm going through with this paper that I'm trying to get published. Okay.
Really? Wow.
So,
You explain
the-
that.
the-
That's interesting. Yeah.
well, the problem, the conditions for receptivity is that, in my case, is that the database that I use is back about 5 years old. Okay. So the conditions that I had back then for getting the different DNA sequences of all these different alleles that I'm looking at was there back then, but at that time I didn't think it necessary, or I did think it was necessary, but it didn't have the ability to capture all those sequences back then. So now when I go back in there and try to find it, they've disappeared, okay, or they're not there. And so they refer me to a whole other set of things. So in the past, I would have just kept on going through and wasting my time to do that. But I've been praying about this, okay?
Huh.
So what happened is, in the old days, I think I would have been, if I was younger, I would have been self-centered, said, I'm going to crash through these sequences and I'm going to make them come out right. But so in this case, it's like what Vince and John have brought up. You have to be humble about this. So I've been praying for God not to necessarily help me solve these problems, but perhaps to show a different pathway. And sure enough, so the blockage I think causes me in this particular case is I get so self-centered and so think that I can, I don't know whether it's because I'm conceited about my abilities or anything, but I just tend to go after something impossible that I can't do and waste a lot of time on it. Now I have, to a certain sense. So I've gone in there and I've actually shown all the defects of these, conditions that have given me. So I think you have to be, I'm asking God to actually show me a way or be humble enough to realize that I can't solve the problem by what I have here. So voila, what happens this morning is I get an email from a guy that was in charge of the old site and tells me, you need to go to this other site and that'll give you the sequences. So you'd have to be humble enough, I think, for me at least, to understand that I've got to rely upon God and other resources for him to bring me a way out of my dilemma. Because if I don't if I don't get this database, the chances of me being able to publish this paper are pretty, we can talk around it, but it'll be pretty slim.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't want to get too technical about it. But.
Yeah.
Hey, Vince,
Yeah.
here's our 85-year-old Pope.
Well, I will be in 2 days, I'm going to be 85 years old.
See?
Wow. Congratulations, Totsi.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow, good for you.
That's
Happy birthday to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
and Totsi, the rest of us think you speak a different language, but it makes me think of Jesus,
It does, yeah.
humankind's, he's speaking a different language and we're trying to figure out what he's saying. Hey, Mike, before you wrap us up, hey, Steve, you didn't, I don't think we heard from you. What are you thinking on this?
Well, I'm thinking, Mike, you've described cognitive dissonance, to put a term on it.
Oh, thank
And-
you. I knew you knew more about this than I did.
And our humanness, we're not comfortable with that typically. Whether it's a result of the fall or what, I don't know. That's probably for another time. but humans don't like to live in that state. And we do want to resolve it. And it's either, receptivity or blockage, I think is what you've said. But, to block it, a lot has to do with our past. And also it has to do with the present, doesn't it? That sense of, well, in some cases, the loss can be very real. I think back to, and I'll try to cut this short here, but Mike, you'll relate to this back when our Plymouth Brethren gathering was beginning to fragment. And a well-known person in that Plymouth Brethren church movement, I spoke with him, and he said, I'm not willing to let a lot of these distinctives, so-called, in terms of how we meet as a church, I'm not willing to let those go because my wife and I purchased those, so to speak, at great cost. We were alienated from our families who were traditional Lutherans and so on and so forth. And that sense of loss made this individual unreceptive. New ways of thinking.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes is there, whether or not we can drill down within ourselves to get to that point, to recognize that. There's a simple sense of loss too, is there not? Why do we want to win an argument?
Yeah.
When there's nothing material at stake in terms of what we'll gain, other than, it's a matter of ego. Yeah. So do I have human nature figured out? No.
Yeah.
But I think we are called to pursue truth.
I do too.
Even when it means letting go.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike? Did you answer your own questions here?
Well, I don't know if no, my intent is not to answer a question. Honestly, it's really the intent of the questions is, like in most cases, John, is to just allow a platform for us to talk, to think and to talk. Not, I have no agenda elsewhere. I would say, based on our discussion and my understanding, is that blockages are self-created. I need to win an argument, Steve, because I feel better about myself. And it really has very little reference to what is true. I think there is what is true, and Jesus speaks from that 100% of the time. But I have to win, not in reference to what is true. I'm not even thinking about that. I need to feel better about myself, and that feeling of better about myself is self-created. My framework that I have built. And at age 68, I'm becoming more and more aware of this. I think the past, as you said, has everything to do with it. But it's just taken nearly a lifetime to really start having the security and the safety in who Christ is and who God says I am through Christ, to be able to address that. I think feeling safe, Steve, is a big thing. Feeling safe. And if I don't feel safe, I have to create that safety. So
I'll be quick here, Mike.
yeah.
This takes me on another trail, and I have puzzled. Well, I'll play my hand here. I've puzzled over the abundance of conspiracy theories and labeling of things as hoaxes and mirages and that kind of thing in recent years. And I'll just say, I think there is part of that is a need to create a sense of safety and security, tying into what you've just said. And
Yeah.
so
right.
it gives rise to that. We have a sense of control if we can figure out the conspiracy behind some of these things.
Yep. And that great point, and very similar to what was behind the question that they posed to Jesus. How long are you going to keep us in suspense? They want control. And they're really no different than I am. So we got to
It's
go.
hard.
We got to go, and we'll look at, I'll be here next week. So let's
Oh,
get
good.
together next week, and we'll go on. I'm already working on the next section. But I just think these words are so interesting that Jesus is talking about. So we'll look at that next week, and have a good week. Hope your paper goes good, Mr. Tossi, and happy birthday. Go ahead and eat
Thank
some
you.
cake for us.
Hey, Totsi, if you need any help, the teacher will help you. Just catch up with Mike. He'll help fix that up for you.
Okay.
No, not me. Have a good week, guys.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
too.
All right, bye now.
So long.